Yeah, so again, for you and for the people who will be watching in the future, welcome. Welcome to this introductory session on feelings work. And of course, for many of you, it's an introduction to something that you're already super engaged in, but it might possibly be a pretty new beginning to other people. The fuller process that feelings work is, for me and for a lot of the people I know who do it, is the process of becoming a more responsible feeler. It's about becoming less numb and perhaps less deaf and blind to the awful things happening in the world that we don't like, outside of us and inside of us. It's also about becoming less numb to the beauty and the wonder of the world, including the beauty and wonder of ourselves. It's about becoming a person who ends up having less frequent emotional outbursts, whether they're kind of the slow burning little darts kind that kill spaces in relationships slowly, or the quick, fast kind that land more like bullets or bombs in relational spaces. It's about dealing with and reducing, to be honest, mind fuckery. Like when pent up or sudden feelings give rise to thoughts like, that person doesn't care about me, or that person isn't safe, or I hate that person. It's about being more often able to see that that person is human, and they probably are protecting themselves somehow from their own unconscious feelings, while being certain that they need to protect themselves against, maybe the person we're pointing to here is myself, you. Maybe you are shutting down to a part of yourself because you just don't know how to handle feeling that deep down uncomfortable feeling that you're having. In any case, I'm glad you're here, and I'm glad I'm here, and I'm glad that I've had so many terrible, awful, hideous experiences that spurred me on my journey to becoming a more responsible healer so that I have things to share with people like you. We're cracking into a pretty vast world, it turns out. A world that modern society, modern culture doesn't talk about a lot. When I look back on my own journey toward more consciously and responsibly feeling, I noticed that it was absolutely necessary for me to gain certain distinctions along the way. And the first distinction that I'm going to talk about with you today is expressed in possibility management. You're going to hear me talk about possibility management a lot today as the old map of 4 feelings. So here it is. And some things I want to point out about the old map is that there are in it 4 primary feelings: anger, sadness, fear, and joy. And of course, there are a lot of other feelings. And what we found is that these 4 primary feelings are the feelings that make up all the other feelings. And sometimes the feelings might be mixed with thoughts, and we use language as if those are feelings sometimes. And there's so much more about that that I won't get into now. Another thing I want to point out about this map is that it is copyleft by Clinton Callahan. Clinton is the originator of possibility management. He's been experimenting with these kinds of concepts for 45 years and engaging a lot of other possibility pirates in experiments to develop this body of work, from which I draw pretty heavily, to be honest, because it is so distinct and clear and empowering. You'll notice that there's a website there, www.nextculture.org. I highly recommend you check it out. Just be warned, it's a bit of a rabbit hole. The other thing I want to point out about this map is that it's subheaded by an assumption. The assumption being that it is not okay to feel. I want to point out also that each of the 4 squares ends with ... because I didn't have room for all the things that are in the original map, which you can find online. I'll send links to that later. They're also in one of Clinton's books called Directing the Power of Conscious Feelings, which is pretty much a bit of a Bible to me in the feelings work I'm doing now, and has been incredibly informative. So I'm not sure if you have been able to read it while I've been holding it up, but I'm going to read it out to you now. So the assumption in the old map of 4 feelings is that it's not okay to feel. It's not okay to feel anger because anger is uncivilized, loud, destructive, unpredictable, impolite. It might hurt someone. It's out of control. It's dangerous, insulting, immature. It can't be taken seriously. It's chaotic, etc. It's not okay to feel sadness because sadness is weak, emotional, childish, too soft, no fun, pathetic, victim-y, unprofessional, not creative, too vulnerable. It makes you look ridiculous, among other things. It's not okay to feel joy because joy is unrealistic, childish, giggly, not serious enough, pretentious, naive, arrogant, temporary. It means you're doing too well, not intellectual. It's not real world. You must be blind to the problems of life. The old map of 4 feelings assumes that it's not okay to feel fear because fear is cowardly, irrational, unstable, Chicken Littleish, impulsive, hysterical, nerve-wracking, paralyzing, powerless. It means you're stuck, weak, incompetent, childish, untrustworthy, etc. I invite you to just notice how you feel and what you think about that map and about the next one. Here is the new map of 4 feelings. And some things I want to point out about the new map are that it includes the same 4 feelings: anger, sadness, fear, and joy. It is also copyleft, which means that it is open source information. And all that's asked of me as a person sharing it is that I let you know where it comes from, which is why I am referring to Clinton and to Possibility Management and their websites over and over. Again, it starts with an assumption, but I want you to notice that it's not the opposite of the assumption on the old map. It doesn't say that the new map says it is okay to feel. And this is one of the cool things that I've learned about evolving thought maps. The new map always includes the old map. Sometimes it's kind of not okay to feel. It's not appropriate to the circumstances. It's not helpful in the here and now. And sometimes feelings do mean what the old map says. Sometimes, for example, someone who's feeling really strong anger is dangerous. This is a map about possibilities. So I'll read some of it to you. The assumption in this map is that feelings serve me professionally and personally, because with anger, you can say no, say yes, start things, stop things, change things. With sadness, you can open up and share and be vulnerable. You can accept things, let things go, grieve, give in, get healed, listen. With joy, you can be enthusiastic, you can inspire others, you can have vision, you can go ahead, you can enjoy possibilities, take adventures, experiment. With fear, you can detect danger, measure risks, concentrate, be curious, make plans, avoid disasters, stay centered, make agreements, handle details. So we're going to pause here to do a writing or audio capture piece to help you land the distinctions that are provided by these two maps. So what I'm going to ask you to do is please write or speak into your audio and consider the question, where are you in regard to the old and new maps of feeling? Where are you in regard to the old and new maps of feeling? And I'll give you a minute. Okay, and I have one more question about that, which is with what you've thought of or come up with or talked about in your audio in regard to where you're at with the old and new maps of feeling. The next question is, how do you know? Okay, and know that you can continue writing about that if you wish to later. My wish and my inspiration when it comes to sharing this work is that we might all more bravely risk being open to the neutral information brought to us by our feelings and by the feelings of others, so that our feelings might serve us professionally and in all of our relationships. The next distinction that I want to share with you is between feelings and feeling and numbness. In possibility management, we talk about the numbness bar as a kind of dial or a setting or a level of measurement. I understand my own numbness bar as the accumulative effects of all the times in my developmental years when, because I was too small and dependent, I couldn't fight or fly in a certain situation. So I froze. It was a survival strategy. There were many times when I didn't have a caregiver who could hold to the new map of feelings and be with me, hold space for me, and talk to me in a way that worked. while I had my sadness. Often, instead of being able to have my sadness, I was soothed or distracted into like a premature finishing of being sad. I couldn't always have my fear. It was often dismissed, or I was kind of rescued out of it as a shortcut, again, out of feeling afraid. I often couldn't have my anger. Often my anger was met with kind of stronger anger, as a force that kind of disciplined me into swallowing my anger or pretending I didn't have it. Even when it came to my joy, I could rarely have joy without being shut down for fear that I was becoming prideful. So, for these and many other reasons, I subconsciously, semi consciously maybe, chose time after time to deny or hide or minimize my feelings, certainly my expression of them. And I developed a habit of being numb. Sometimes that meant, like I said earlier, being blind or deaf to things that were happening inside of me and outside of me. So here we're going to pause and do another writing or audio capture. And this time the question is, where do you see yourself as being in regard to the numbness bar? Where do you see yourself in regard to the numbness bar? Go. That's the first minute. And I'd also like you to take another minute to ask yourself and write about how can you tell? How can you tell where you're at in regard to the numbness bar? Thank you. So the next thing I'm going to invite you to do is to put your writing tools down and to close your eyes. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a bit of a look underneath our numbness bars. And just feel and see if you can discern indicators of how you feel, either through physical sensations of tension or tightness or movement in your physical body. And consider each of the four primary feelings: anger, sadness, fear, and joy. And just notice them as kind of four tanks of possibility. And one of those tanks might be, say, 5% of the possible 100% full of perhaps anger. And just note what percent out of 100% of each of the four feelings is happening in you right now. And notice what happens while you notice. Thank you. And you might want to take some time just to jot down a few notes. And what I'm going to do next, I have to set up. All right. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to demonstrate for you one of the ways that I've been experimenting with and guiding other people to experiment with lowering our numbness bars. I'm going to set myself a timer for 20 seconds while I practice anger. Oh, 20 seconds happened fast. So that might have looked like a simple, and if you're still under the influence of the old map of feelings, it might have looked like a crazy or embarrassing or appalling or even unacceptable thing to do. So I'm going to break it down a little bit. As I mentioned earlier, during outbursts in my adult life, I've caused damage to some of my most precious relationships, including the one with myself. I've also caused damage by being numb, because it was the being numb part for a long time, being numb for a long time while feelings started to bubble and trouble underneath my numbness bar, that became like the precursor to emotional outbursts. In a way, the bottom line for me is that I'm scared. I feel scared, even terrified sometimes about my numbness. So I'm using my fear consciously to lower my numbness bar. Some of the distinctions that are at play are that while I do this practice, I'm feeling, I'm not thinking. I might have thoughts happen, and I sometimes start by allowing myself to feel the anger, and I might coax it with some thoughts. But there's no need for me to fixate with my mind or thoughts on a person as if I have to like pretend I have anger. It's about having authentic anger and having my authentic anger happen. Sometimes I do get visions of things like animals choking up on garbage or children glazed over on their technology devices. But it's not like I'm angry at anyone. I'm feeling anger. I am not being anger. I can even be having feelings of anger instead of feeling anger. Do you see the space that's kind of opening up between anger and Nicole? My anger is not having me. I am not angry. I'm feeling my anger. I'm owning it as mine. Part of this practice is to turn the anger off at the end when the timer goes off, and to choose to start when the timer starts, welling up into having the anger. Through my experiences with consciously and intentionally practicing and learning from my practice of anger, I'm clear that this exercise is changing things for me. For one, it's cathartic. After I've done it, I feel far more alive, and any pent up anger that I had beforehand is kind of dissipated, and that's super helpful. But mostly what I find it's done is that it has caught me up on expressing anger, and it's also grown my capacity to feel my anger. This means that I often notice that I'm feeling angry when I have only 5% anger going on. It doesn't need to kind of get up to 20% before my conscious awareness catches up with the anger. It also means that when I choose to step into transformational spaces for emotional healing processes, my anger is far more accessible. And in the 3-part series that will start the same time as this session started next week, and for the next weeks after that, we'll go into transformative emotional processing some more. So what I demonstrated was 20 seconds of feeling anger. It's a snippet from a bigger experiment that is very popular in possibility management circles that we call the 333 rage experiment. In this experiment, we commit to doing 3 minutes of rage 3 times a week for 3 months. In possibility management, we also practice fear this way. Other practices that we do in possibility management are group practices that we call Rage Club and Fear Club. And you might be delighted to know that the first and second rules of Rage Club and Fear Club are to tell everyone about Rage Club and Fear Club. There are 2 other rules, and those are don't hurt yourself and don't hurt anyone else. So I'd like to give you all a chance to feel your anger. How do you feel about that, I wonder? Maybe a little scared, if we're honest? If so, that would be okay, because fear is welcome here. Remembering that fear can serve us. It can wake us up to the world around us and inside us. I think that the meme, no fear, is a meme that threatens to keep humans asleep, actually. So if you want to do this, you are welcome to get your hand towel. You can use it to muffle the sounds you make. And if you want to, before we start, you can just shout to your housemates or anyone near, I'm going to be loud for a bit, but it's all okay. Doesn't mean anything's wrong. I'm not about to hurt anyone or anything. It's a thing I'm trying out, an experiment I'm doing. So I'm going to set my alarm for 25 seconds because I think 20 was a bit short. And I invite you to stand up. In the 333 practice, we actually do it lying down on our backs and have a nice old temper tantrum. But we'll do this standing up. And one of the tips I'll give you is to feel your anger as if it lives in your bones. Feel your anger as if it lives in your bones. And I'll count us down from 3. 3, 2, 1, go. Does anyone wish they could have done that longer? Okay. And it's possible that you might have wished that you weren't doing it at all. So for everyone who did give it a try, thank you. So I'd like to give you a minute now to write or record your reflections on that experiment. Awesome. And of course, you can write more later. So we have 4 minutes left in our time together today. One thing I want to do is share some links that you might find useful if you want to continue to explore feelings work. As I said, you're welcome to book in with me for a 30-minute call about whatever feedback you have, whatever ideas you have about how you might want to proceed or not, according to relevant factors like how much time you have available and other forms of investment that it would take, including finances. The 3-week series that starts same time next week but goes for 2 hours on Tuesday afternoons for 3 weeks in a row. The cost of that is a sliding scale of $50 to $80 per person, and you get to choose. I also will be setting up sessions in the future depending on what people are interested in doing. One of the possibilities is to do a 333 club where we each commit to practicing anger or fear. And we would probably start with anger, 3 minutes a day for 3 days a week for 3 months. And that we would do that together in a call just like this. And we would open with a check-in, do the 3 minutes, and then close with a checkout. And it's usually about a half-hour commitment 3 times a week. You can also, of course, do that experiment on your own, and I can send you to a website that can revive your clarity around that. This is probably a good place to sneak in too that I'm open to receiving donations from any of you if you feel you want to give for being here today. And also, I will be able to stay a bit longer after the time is up for anyone who can stay longer. And I'm just going to check the chat to see if there are any questions. It's mostly about people leaving already because they needed to go. Great, thank you. I will post my website and the Facebook event page for the 3-part series in the chat. And then I invite you to open up your microphones if you like to share it all. But first we'll probably end the recording there. So for anyone who's listening to the recording, I would love for you to get in touch with me through my website at NicoleHartleyBradford.com or find me on Facebook. Oops. Oh dear. Now I've done something very strange and started. Okay. Here come the links. So I'll do a kind of soft ending here for the recording, and then I'd love to hear from people.